Hey there, folks. Welcome to our cozy nook of tales and adventures. Today, like every episode, we're unlocking the doors of imagination to explore new worlds, meet fascinating characters, and experience unique emotions. I promise to take you on an unforgettable journey through the power of words. So, get comfy, grab your favorite drink, snuggle into that perfect spot, and get ready to lose yourself in a new story. Leave the outside world behind for a while and dive with me into the depths of storytelling. If you enjoy our content and want to support the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button and giving the video a thumbs up. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's story. In the twilight of Valinor, where time flows like golden honey and the worries of the mortal world fade like mist at dawn, Gandalf the White walked through the meadows of Arwin. His steps, once heavy with the burden of countless responsibilities, were now as light as feathers on the wind. The wizard, his silver beard gleaming under the gentle glow of Varda's stars, breathed deeply the air perfumed with ethereal essences. As he walked, memories of his journeys in Middle-earth danced in his mind like leaves in the autumn wind. He remembered Frodo, the ring-bearer, whose courage surpassed the unimaginable weight of his mission. He thought of Aragorn, the king who rose from the shadows to lead his people to glory. And he smiled as he recalled the hobbits of the Shire, whose simplicity and joy of living were a balm for the soul in dark times. The wizard paused at the edge of a crystalline stream, whose waters murmured ancient secrets. There, he sat on a soft moss-covered stone, letting the serenity of the place envelop him like a comforting mantle. He closed his eyes, feeling the breeze caress his face like gentle fingers, brushing away the last sparks of concern that still lingered in his being. It was then that he heard a soft rustling of wings. Opening his eyes, Gandalf saw Gwaihir the Windlord landing gracefully beside him. The great eagle, whose feathers shone like gold under the starlight, inclined his head in a gesture of respect. "Mithrandir," said Gwaihir, his voice as deep as the distant roar of a waterfall. "I've come to keep you company on this serene night." Gandalf smiled, reaching out to stroke the soft feathers of the eagle's neck. "Your presence is always welcome, my old friend," the wizard replied, his voice laden with affection. Together, they observed the stars twinkling in the firmament, each telling a millennia-old story. Gwaihir began to narrate his travels through the skies of Arda, describing breathtaking landscapes and encounters with creatures long forgotten by time. As the night progressed, other inhabitants of Valinor were drawn to the serene presence of Gandalf and Gwaihir. Elrond, the half-elven, approached silently, bringing with him the aroma of Athalas. Galadriel, the Lady of Light, arrived soon after, her presence gently illuminating the glade like moonlight reflected on a placid lake. A circle of friendship and wisdom formed around the stream. Elrond shared stories of Imladris, the elven refuge hidden in the valley. His melodic voice painted vivid images of golden halls and silver waterfalls, where music and poetry flowed as freely as the waters of the Bruinen. Galadriel, with eyes that seemed to contain the depth of the seas and the vastness of the ages, spoke of Lothlorien, the golden realm that had once been her home. She described the majestic Melorns, whose golden leaves whispered ancient songs, and the magical mirror that revealed the secrets of past, present, and future. As the stories unfolded, a deep peace fell upon the group. It was as if time itself had paused to listen, and the stars shone more brightly, as if they wanted to draw closer to hear better. Gandalf, sensing the opportune moment, raised his staff. With a gentle movement, he conjured ethereal images in the air of the battles and journeys that had shaped the fate of Middle-earth. Those present saw the fall of Sauron, the coronation of Aragorn, and the return of the hobbits to the Shire. But it wasn't the great battles or moments of glory that Gandalf chose to emphasize. Instead, he showed the small acts of kindness and courage that truly saved the world. Sam carrying Frodo up the slopes of Mount Doom, Pippin facing his fears to light the beacons of Gondor, Merry defying the Witch King of Angmar to protect Arwin. As the night wore on, a soft melody began to echo through the glade. It was Linder, the minstrel of Rivendell, who had silently joined the group. His fingers danced over the strings of his harp, weaving a song that seemed to capture the essence of all the stories shared. Linder's music was like a river of liquid silver, flowing through the hearts of those present, washing away the last remnants of worry and fear. It was a song of hope, of perseverance, of friendship, and love, the true powers that had defeated darkness. As the melody hung in the air like an enchanted mist, Gandalf felt a familiar presence approaching. It was Arwin, his true self, the Mire essence that existed before his incarnation as the Grey Wizard. It wasn't a visible presence, but a feeling of completeness, of returning to a primordial and serene state of being. In that moment, Gandalf understood that his journey had truly come to an end. All the challenges, all the battles, all the doubts and fears, everything had led to this moment of absolute peace. With a gentle smile, the wizard closed his eyes, allowing himself to immerse completely in the serenity of Valinor. The voices of his friends, Linder's music, the murmur of the stream, and the soft rustling of leaves merged into a cosmic symphony of tranquility. And so, under Varda's starry mantle, surrounded by friends and cradled by memories of a life well lived, Gandalf, the Grey Pilgrim, the White Rider, finally found his rest. As the story comes to an end, listeners feel a deep peace settling in their hearts. The worries of everyday life seem distant and insignificant in the face of the vastness and beauty of Tolkien's universe. Breathing becomes slower and deeper, muscles relax, and a sense of well-being envelops every fiber of one's being. The last words of the narrative sound like a soft enchantment, gently guiding towards restorative sleep, where dreams of magical lands and epic adventures await. And so, lulled by Gandalf's wisdom and the magic of Valinor, listeners slip into a deep and rejuvenating sleep, free from anxieties and filled with wonders. Story 2. In the heart of Middle-earth, where ancient forests stand as living testaments to ages long past, there lies a realm of mystery and wonder known as Fanger. Here, among the gnarled roots and towering boughs, the very air seems to whisper secrets of bygone eras. It is in this enchanted wood that our tale begins, as the last rays of sunlight filter through the dense canopy, painting the forest floor in hues of gold and amber. Treebird, the oldest of the Ents, stood sentinel at the edge of a secluded glade. His bark-like skin, weathered by countless seasons, bore the marks of time itself. Eyes as deep and wise as the forest itself gazed out over the landscape, taking in the subtle changes that only one who has watched the world for millennia could perceive. As twilight descended upon Fanger, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying with it the scent of earth and bloom. Treebird's eyes slowly closed, his roots drinking deeply from the rich soil beneath it. In this moment of tranquility, he began to hum a song so low and sonorous that it seemed to resonate with the very heartbeat of the forest. The melody, ancient and soothing, spread through the wood like ripples on a still pond. Gradually, other voices joined in the creaking of branches, the soft patter of falling leaves, the distant murmur of hidden streams. Fangorn itself was awakening to the song of its eldest guardian. As the night deepened, creatures of the forest emerged from their hiding places, drawn by the enchanting harmony. A family of deer, their steps as light as whispers, entered the glade. They moved with graceful caution, their large eyes reflecting the starlight that now peeked through gaps in the leafy ceiling above. Nearby, a wise old owl alighted on a gnarled branch, its feathers rustling softly as it settled. Its large, luminous eyes blinked slowly, taking in the scene with quiet curiosity. The owl's presence seemed to add another layer to the forest song, a gentle, rhythmic hooting that blended seamlessly with the other nocturnal sounds. As Treebird's song continued, more of Fangorn's inhabitants stirred. Fireflies emerged, their soft lights dancing between the trees like earthbound stars. Their gentle glow illuminated the misty air, creating an ethereal atmosphere that seemed to blur the line between the waking world and the realm of dreams. From the depths of the forest came the Huorns, ancient trees awakened by the Ents long ago. They moved with ponderous grace, their roots lifting and settling with each step, leaving no trace of their passage. These silent sentinels gathered around the glade, their presence adding a depth and resonance to Treebird's song that seemed to echo through the very bones of the earth. As the night wore on, the music of Fangorn began to change. It grew softer, more intricate, weaving together the countless voices of the forest into a tapestry of sound. The song spoke of ages past, of great battles and quiet moments of beauty, of the slow, patient growth of trees and the swift, fleeting lives of mortals. In this symphony of nature, one could hear the whisper of Yavanna, the Vala who had first sung the trees into being. Her essence lingered in every leaf and branch, in every blade of grass and drop of dew. The song of Fanger was her song, a living testament to the enduring power of creation. As midnight approached, a new presence entered the glade. It was Tom Bombadil, the enigmatic master of wood and water, dell and hill. His bright blue eyes twinkled with mirth and ancient wisdom as he stepped lightly into the circle of trees. Without a word, he joined the song, his clear voice rising above the forest's chorus. Tom's verses spoke of the joy of life, of the beauty found in the simplest things, a dewdrop on a leaf, the first green shoot of spring, the laughter of a bubbling brook. His words seemed to infuse the forest with renewed vitality, and even the oldest trees swayed gently in response to his merry tune. As Tom sang, he danced in circles around the glade, his yellow boots hardly seeming to touch the ground. Flowers sprouted in his wake, their petals unfurling in the starlight. The air grew thick with the scent of blooms that hadn't been seen in Fangern for an age, their fragrance mingling with the earthy aroma of the ancient wood. Treebird watched Tom with eyes that held the memory of countless years. In the dancing figure before him, the old and saw echoes of the world's youth, when the first raindrops fell and the first seeds took root. It was a reminder that even in the oldest of forests, there was always room for new life and new songs. As the night deepened, the song of Fangern began to slow. The tempo became more languid, the rhythms more soothing. It was as if the forest itself was preparing for slumber, inviting all who listened to join in its restful repose. The deer family, which had been standing entranced at the edge of the glade, slowly lowered themselves to the soft forest floor. The owl's eyes began to droop, its head tucking beneath a wing. Even the fireflies seemed to dim, their lights pulsing in time with the gentle rhythm of the forest's lullaby. Tom Bombadil's dance slowed to a gentle sway, his song becoming a soft, wordless humming that blended seamlessly with the forest's music. He moved to stand beside Treebird, placing a hand on the ancient Ent's bark in a gesture of friendship that transcended the ages. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, the song of Fangern reached its conclusion. The final notes hung in the air like mist, slowly dissipating as the forest settled into a peaceful silence. But it was not the empty silence of absence, rather. It was a silence full of life and potential, quiet and hale before the forest's next great song. Treebird's eyes slowly opened, taking in the glade now bathed in the soft light of pre-dawn. The Huerns had returned to their places deep in the wood, leaving no sign of their nighttime gathering. The deer family slumbered peacefully beneath a large oak, while the owl dozed contentedly in its branch. Tom Bombadil, with a final pat on Treebird's trunk and a wink of his bright blue eye, turned and wandered back into the depths of the forest. His faint song could be heard for a while, growing fainter until it merged with the general awakening of the wood. As the new day began, Fangern Forest stirred with renewed life. Birds began their morning chorus, small creatures rustled in the underbrush, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh growth through the ancient trees. But beneath these familiar sounds, those who listened closely might still hear the echoes of the night's grand symphony, a reminder of the deep magic that dwells in the heart of Middle-earth's oldest realms. Treebird, standing tall in the growing light, felt a deep contentment settle in his ancient heart. The night's song had rejuvenated him, connecting him once more to the very essence of the world he had guarded for so long. With a slow, creaking movement, he stretched his branches towards the sky, ready to face another day in the endless cycle of seasons. And so, as the sun's first rays touched the canopy of Fangern, the forest settled into its daytime rhythm. The magic of the night lingered, a soft undercurrent beneath the bustling activity of the new day. For those who had witnessed the forest's nocturnal symphony, whether in person or in dreams, the experience left a lasting sense of peace and wonder, a connection to something greater than themselves. In Fangern, every day brings new growth, new songs, and new stories. But always, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, one can hear the whispers of ages past, the gentle reminders of the deep and abiding magic that flows through every leaf and branch of this timeless realm. Story 3. In the heart of the misty mountains, where stone meets shadow and history whispers through ancient halls, lies the once great dwarven kingdom of curated, now known to most as Moria. Though its glory has faded and its halls have known darkness, there remains a magic in its depths that few have witnessed. It is here, in the quiet aftermath of the War of the Ring, that our tale unfolds. As the last echoes of battle faded from Middle-earth, a small company of dwarves, led by Gimli, son of Gul-in, ventured into the depths of Moria. Their purpose was not conquest or treasure-seeking, but a pilgrimage of sorts to honor the fallen and to listen to the stories etched in stone. The company entered through the west gate, the starlight reflecting off the Ithildan runes that still adorned the doors. As they passed into the mountain, each dwarf felt the weight of history settle upon their shoulders. Gimli, his beard now streaked with silver, ran his hand along the wall, feeling the smooth stone beneath his fingers. "Listen," he whispered, his voice carrying in the stillness. "The very stones remember," and indeed, as the company stood in silence, it seemed as if the mountain itself began to speak. The faint drip of water echoed through distant chambers, creating a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. The soft whisper of air through ancient ventilation shafts sounded like the breath of the mountain itself. Gimli led the way deeper into Moria, his footsteps sure despite the years that had passed since his last visit. The dwarves lit their lamps, but kept the flames low, allowing the natural phosphorescence of certain stones to guide their way. The soft, bluish glow cast gentle shadows that danced along the walls, bringing to life carvings and runes that had lain dormant for ages. As they traversed the 21st hall, Gimli began to hum a low, melodious tune. It was an old dwarven song, one that spoke of the founding of curated and the glory of Durin's folk. Slowly, other voices joined in, the harmony growing richer and fuller until it seemed to fill every crevice of the vast chamber. The song echoed off the towering pillars, each carved to resemble mighty trees reaching towards a stone sky. As the dwarves sang, it was as if the very stone came alive around them. Shadows shifted, and for a moment, it seemed as if the hall was filled with the ghostly forms of dwarves long past, going about their daily lives in a kingdom at the height of its power. Gimli's voice rose above the others as he sang of Durin the Deathless, the father of the dwarven race. His words painted vivid pictures in the minds of his companions of a young world full of wonder, of the first dwarves awakening beneath the mountains, of the discovery of Mithril, and the crafting of wonders beyond imagining. As the song faded, a reverent silence fell over the company. They continued their journey, passing through grand halls and narrow passageways, each step taking them deeper into the heart of the mountain. The air grew warmer, carrying with it the faint scent of forges long cold. They came at last to the chamber of Mizarble, where Balin, Lord of Moria, had made his last stand. Gimli approached the tomb with slow, measured steps, his companions hanging back to give him a moment of privacy. He placed his hand on the smooth stone, his head bowed in silent communion with his fallen kin. As Gimli stood there, something extraordinary began to happen. A soft light, different from the glow of their lamps or the phosphorescent stones, began to emanate from the tomb. It grew steadily brighter, filling the chamber with a warm, golden radiance. The dwarves watched in awe as the light coalesced into the form of Balin himself. The apparition was translucent, like starlight given form, but unmistakably the dwarf lord they had come to honor. Balin's eyes, filled with the wisdom of ages, met Gimli's, and a smile of recognition passed between them. When Balin spoke, his voice was like the whisper of stone, soft yet carrying the weight of mountain. "Welcome, sons of Durin," he said, his gaze taking in each member of the company. "Long have we waited for this day, when the halls of our fathers would once again know the tread of dwarven feet." Gimli, his voice thick with emotion, replied, "We have come to remember Lord Balin and to learn. The world above has changed, but the heart of the mountain remains steady." Balin nodded, his form shimmering slightly. "Then listen well, for the stone has much to teach." With these words, He raised his hand, and the chamber around them seemed to dissolve. The dwarves found themselves standing in Causet Diem, as it once was, at the height of its glory. They saw great forges where master craftsmen worked mithril into items of surpassing beauty. They witnessed the carving of mighty halls, the laying of intricate mosaics, the creation of mechanical marvels that merged dwarven craft with ancient magic. Through it all, Balin's voice guided them, explaining the techniques long lost to time, the secrets of working with stone and metal that had made Causet Diem the greatest of all dwarven realms. He showed them the hidden waterways that brought life to the depths of the mountain, gardens illuminated by captured starlight where rare fungi and crystals grew in abundance. The dwarves saw the great library of Causet Diem, where lore masters recorded the history and knowledge of their people. Tomes filled with craft secrets, astronomical observations, and the deep magic of stone sense lined the shelves, their contents a testament to the intellectual achievements of Durin's folk. As the vision continued, Balin led them to the most sacred place in all of Moria, the Mirror of Keld's Ram. Here, in the still waters of the lake, Durin had first seen the crown of stars reflected, taking it as a sign to establish his kingdom. The company stood at the water's edge, their reflections merging with the starry sky above. Balin's voice grew solemn as he spoke of the cycles of history, of rise and fall, of darkness and rebirth. The path ahead is long, he said, but not without hope. The strength of the dwarves lies not in our walls or our wealth, but in our hearts and our craft. As he spoke these words, the vision began to fade. The dwarves found themselves once again in the chamber of Mizarble, the golden light dimming until only the soft glow of their lamps remained. Balin's form had disappeared, but his presence lingered, a warmth in the air and a resonance in the stone around them. Gimli, his eyes bright with unshed tears, turned to his companions. "We have been given a great gift," he said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "Not just the knowledge of our past, but a vision for our future." The other dwarves nodded in agreement, each lost in thought about what they had witnessed. They had come seeking memories, but had found so much more a connection to their ancestors, a deeper understanding of their craft, and a renewed sense of purpose. As the company prepared to leave Moria, there was a palpable shift in the air around them. The oppressive weight of tragedy that had long hung over these halls seemed to have lifted, replaced by a sense of potential and renewal. The stone itself seemed more alive, resonating with the echoes of ancient songs and the promise of new ones yet to be sung. Gimli led the way out, but not before placing his hand once more on Balin's tomb. "We will return," he promised softly, "and we will rebuild, not as it was, but as it could be a bridge between the wisdom of the past and the hope of the future." As they emerged from the east gate, the first light of dawn was breaking over the mountains. The dwarves stood for a moment, blinking in the pale sunlight, each lost in thought about the wonders they had witnessed and the knowledge they now carried. Gimli took a deep breath of the crisp mountain air, feeling the warmth of the rising sun on his face. He turned to look back at the gate, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The echoes of Moria would live on, not just in stone and memory, but in the hearts and hands of those who would carry its legacy forward. As the company began their journey home, the mountain behind them seemed to whisper a farewell. The wind carried the faint sound of hammers on stone and the melodious strains of dwarven song, a promise that the great halls of Causet Diem would one day ring again with the sound of life and laughter, craft and creation. And so, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the ancient stone, the dwarves set out with renewed purpose. They carried with them not just the echoes of Moria's past, but the first notes of a new song, one of restoration, of bridging old and new, of honoring their heritage, while forging a bright and wondrous future. Story 4. In a hidden valley where the Brunan River sings its eternal song, nestled among the foothills of the misty mountains, lies Rivendell, the last homely house east of the sea. Here, where time seems to flow different, and the air itself is imbued with ancient magic, our tale unfolds on a midsummer's eve, long after the War of the Ring has passed into legend. The sun had just dipped below the western horizon, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold. As twilight deepened, the first stars began to twinkle overhead, their light reflecting in the myriad waterfalls that cascaded down Rivendell's cliff faces. In the gardens of Elrond's house, lanterns crafted from gossamer and starlight began to glow, casting a soft, ethereal radiance over the paths and arbors. Arwin and Mile, the ebon star of her people, walked alone through these gardens. Though many years had passed since she chose a mortal life, her beauty remained undimmed, living memory of the glory of the elves. Her steps were silent on the soft grass, and the hem of her silver gown shimmered like moonlight on water. As she walked, Arwen's thoughts turned to the changing world beyond Rivendell's borders. The age of men had truly begun, and the time of the elves was fading. Yet here, in this timeless valley, the echoes of ages past still lingered, preserved in stone and song. Arwen came to a stop beside a fountain carved in the likeness of Elfine Tinville. The water that flowed from the statue's outstretched hands seemed to catch the starlight, each droplet a miniature galaxy. As she gazed into the fountain's pool, ripples formed on the surface, though there was no wind to disturb the water. Suddenly, the garden around her seemed to shift and change. The lanterns dimmed, and the starlight grew stronger, until it seemed as if the very air was aglow. From the shadows of the trees stepped a figure Arwen had known only in ancient tales and faded tapestries. Melian the Maya, her ancestress and the mother of Elfine. Melian's form was both there and not there, as substantial as mist, yet as radiant as a newborn star. Her eyes held the wisdom of ages, and when she spoke, her voice was like the melody of creation itself. Child of many waters, Melian said, her gaze soft with compassion. Long have I watched your path, from the high halls of Imladris to the white towers of Minas Tirith. You have chosen a road not unlike my own, forsaking immortality for the love of a mortal. Arwen bowed her head in reverence. Great lady, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, I am honored by your presence. But tell me, why have you come to me now, when the power of the elves is waning and the time of magic is passing from this world? Melian smiled, and it was as if all of Rivendell brightened. The magic of this world does not pass, dear one. It changes, as all things must, but it does not diminish. Even as the elves depart these shores, they leave behind a legacy that will endure through the ages of men. As she spoke, the garden around them began to transform. Arwen watched in wonder as scenes from the history of Middle-earth played out before her eyes. She saw the awakening of the elves by the waters of Cuivi-Nen, the great journey westward, the founding of realms both hidden and mighty. Melian's voice continued, weaving the tales together like threads in a tapestry. The music of the Aenir that shaped this world still echoes in every stone and stream, in every tree and flower. It lives in the hearts of all free peoples, elves and men alike, and it will continue, carried forward by those who remember and those who dream. The visions shifted, showing Arwen glimpses of the future. She saw children in the streets of Minas Tirith singing elven lays, though they knew not the meaning of the words. She watched as scholars pored over ancient texts, preserving the wisdom of the elder days. In forests and mountains, in quiet groves and by babbling brooks, she saw people pausing to listen, hearing echoes of a song older than the world itself. Your choice, Melian said gently, was not an ending, but a beginning. In you, the blood of elves and men is mingled, creating a bridge between two worlds. Your children and their children after them will carry the light of the elves into the future of men. As she spoke, the starlight seemed to coalesce around Arwen, sinking into her very being. She felt a warmth spreading through her, a sense of connection to all the ages of the world, past and future. Melian reached out, her hand hovering just above Arwen's heart. The gift of the elves to the world of men is not in artifacts or realms, but in the capacity to see the wonder in all things. To hear the music of creation in the rustle of leaves, to see the light of stars reflected in a dewdrop, to feel the rhythm of the world in the changing of seasons. This gift you carry within you, and through you, it will endure. The vision began to fade, the garden of Rivendell slowly reasserting itself around them. But before she disappeared entirely, Melian had one last message for Arwen. Remember, child of twilight, that even in the darkest night, starlight endures. And in every heart that turns its face to that light, a peace of Rivendell lives on. With these words, Melian's form dissolved into mist, leaving Arwen alone once more by the fountain. But the Evenstar no longer felt alone. The garden around her seemed more alive than ever, each flower and leaf singing a silent song of ages past and ages yet to come. As if in a dream, Arwen began to walk again, her steps taking her to places in Rivendell she had known since childhood. But now she saw them with new eyes. In the library, where ancient tomes lined the shelves, she saw not just repositories of knowledge, but seeds of wonder waiting to be planted in fertile minds. In the Hall of Fire, where elven minstrels had sung for thousands of years, she heard not just echoes of old songs, but the first notes of new melodies yet to be composed. She came at last to the bridge over the Bruinen, where the roar of the river filled the air. Leaning on the railing, Arwen looked out over the valley of Rivendell, taking in the beauty that had been her home for so long. But now, instead of feeling the bittersweet pang of impending farewell, she felt a sense of continuity, of being part of a story that would never truly end. As the night deepened around her, Arwen began to sing. It was an ancient lullaby, one her father had sung to her when she was a child. But as the words flowed from her lips, they seemed to take on new meaning. It was a song of hope, of the enduring light that resides in all things, of the beauty that remains even when all seems lost. Her voice carried on the night air, weaving through the trees and over the waters. And as she sang, it seemed as if all of Rivendell sang with her. The rustling leaves, the babbling brooks, the very stones of the ancient buildings joined in harmony with her song. In that moment, Arwen understood the true gift of the elves to the world of men. It was not in grand palaces or magical artifacts, but in this, the ability to see the magic in the everyday, to hear the music in the silence, to find light in the darkness. As the first light of dawn began to touch the eastern sky, Arwen's song came to an end, but its echoes lingered in the air, a promise of beauty and wonder that would endure long after the last elf had sailed into the west. With a heart full of peace and purpose, Arwen turned back towards the last homely house. She knew now that though times would change and the world would move on, the starlight of Rivendell, the magic, the wisdom, and the beauty of the elves would never truly fade. It would live on in stories and songs, in acts of kindness and moments of quiet wonder, a guiding light for all who sought it. And so, as a new day dawned over Rivendell, Arwen and Mile, the Evenstar of her people, carried within her the light of ages past and the hope of ages to come. In her, and in all who would remember, the starlight of Rivendell would shine eternal. Story 5. In the northwest of Middle-earth, nestled between the Brandywine River and the far downs, lies a gentle land of rolling hills and quiet streams. This is the Shire, home of the hobbits, where the grass is always green, gardens are always bountiful, and the ale is always brewing. It is here, in this idyllic corner of the world, that our tale unfolds. Many years after the great events that shook Middle-earth have faded into legend, the day began like any other in Hobbiton. As the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, smoke began to rise from the chimneys of the cozy hobbit holes dotting the hillsides. The smell of freshly baked bread and frying bacon wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of pipeweed. In Bag End, the most famous hobbit hole of all, elderly Frodo Gardener, son of Samwise Gamgee, stirred from his slumber. Though his hair had long since turned white and his steps had slowed, his eyes still held a spark of the adventure that had defined his father's life. As Frodo made his way to the kitchen, he paused by the study where portraits of Bilbo and Frodo Baggins hung on the wall. Beside them was the Red Book, the famous chronicle of the War of the Ring, penned by Bilbo, Frodo, and Sam. Frodo Gardener ran his hand gently over the book's cover, feeling the weight of history beneath his fingers. After a hearty breakfast, for hobbits never start the day without one, Frodo set out into the garden. The flowers were in full bloom, a riot of colors under the morning sun. As he tended to the plants, his mind wandered to the tales his father had told him of Galadriel's garden in Lothal Reen. While the Shire might not have the magic of the Elven realms, it had a charm all its own. As the morning wore on, Frodo made his way down to the party field, where preparations were underway for the Midsummer's Eve celebration. Hobbits of all ages were bustling about, setting up tables, hanging lanterns, and rolling out barrels of ale from the Green Dragon. At the center of the field stood the party tree, a mighty oak that had grown from a seed of the Malorn tree, a gift from the Lady Galadriel to Samwise Gamgee. Its silver bark gleamed in the sunlight, and its golden leaves rustled in the gentle breeze, a living reminder of the connection between the Shire and the wider world beyond. As Frodo watched the preparations, he felt a tug on his sleeve. Looking down, he saw young Pippin Took, a distant relation and one of the many children who loved to hear Frodo's tales of the old days. "Mr. Frodo," Pippin said, his eyes wide with excitement, "will you tell us a story for the celebration tonight? One about the elves, or the dwarves, or the great battles?" Frodo chuckled, ruffling the young hobbit's curly hair. "Perhaps, young Pippin, but you know, the greatest stories aren't always about grand adventures or mighty deeds. Sometimes the most important tales are about the simple things: home, family, and the land we love." As he spoke, Frodo's gaze drifted across the Shire. He saw hobbits going about their daily lives, farmers tending their crops, millers at their wheels, mothers calling their children in for allowances. In each simple act, he saw a reflection of the enduring spirit that had allowed the Shire to flourish for generations. As evening approached, hobbits from all over the Shire began to gather in the party field. Lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the festivities. The air was filled with laughter, the clinking of mugs, and the merry tunes of fiddles and flutes. Frodo found himself at the base of the party tree, surrounded by a circle of eager faces, young and old alike. As the chatter died down, he cleared his throat and began to speak. "My dear hobbits," he said, his voice carrying across the field, "tonight I want to tell you a story, not of distant lands or great battles, but of a place much closer to home. I want to tell you the song of the Shire itself." And so, Frodo began to weave a tale. He spoke of the founding of the Shire, of Marco and Blanco who led the hobbits across the Brandywine. He told of the building of the first smiles, of the planting of the first gardens, of the brewing of the first ales. As he spoke, something magical began to happen. The very air seemed to shimmer, and the hobbits found themselves transported through time, witnessing the history of their homeland unfold before their eyes. They saw the Shire in its early days, a land of promise and new beginnings. They watched as generations of hobbits tilled the soil, built their homes, and formed the close-knit communities that would define their way of life. Frodo's voice took on a somber tone as he recounted the dark days of the fell winter, when wolves roamed the frozen Brandywine. But even in those harsh times, the resilience of the hobbits shone through. They saw neighbors helping neighbors, sharing what little they had, their unity a bulwark against the cold and hunger. The tale moved on to happier times, the great parties of old, the founding of the Matham House in Michel Delving, the first time pipeweed was planted in the South Farthing. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry of Shire life, simple yet vibrant. As Frodo spoke of more recent times, the hobbits saw the Shire during the War of the Ring. They felt the shadow of fear that had briefly touched their land, but more importantly, they saw the courage of those who stood against it. The Battle of Bywater came to life before their eyes, with farmers and millers taking up arms to defend their home. But it was the aftermath of the war that truly captured the essence of the Shire. Frodo described the great replanting, led by his father Samwise, which had restored and enhanced the beauty of the land. The hobbits watched in wonder as bare hills were covered in new growth, as gardens bloomed with unprecedented vigor, as the Shire was reborn more beautiful than ever before. Throughout the tale, Frodo wove in the small, everyday moments that truly define life in the Shire: the joy of a well-tended garden, the comfort of a warm hearth on a cold night, pleasure of a pint shared with good friends. He spoke of the changing seasons, each bringing its own beauty and bounty to the land. As Frodo's story neared its end, he looked out at the gathering of hobbits before him. In their faces, he saw the same spirit that had sustained the Shire through good times and bad, the love of simple pleasures and the strength found in community. "My dear hobbits," Frodo said, his voice soft but filled with emotion, "this is the true magic of the Shire, not in great deeds or powerful artifacts, but in the everyday kindness we show to one another, in the care we take of our land, in the joy we find in life's simple pleasures. This is our song, a song that has been sung for generations and will continue long after we are gone. As Frodo fell silent, a hush fell over the gathering. Then, slowly at first, but building in strength, a sound began to rise from the assembled hobbits. It was a song, an old Shire folk tune that everyone knew by heart. But tonight, it seemed to carry new meaning, as if the very essence of their homeland was woven into its melody. The song swelled, voices young and old blending in harmony. And as they sang, each hobbit felt a deep connection to the land, to their history, and to each other. They understood, perhaps for the first time, that they were all part of something greater, a living, breathing community that had endured for generations and would continue to thrive. As the last notes of the song faded away, Frodo looked up at the night sky. The stars twinkled brightly, and for a moment, he fancied he could see the light of the undying lands, where his father and the ring-bearers had sailed long ago. But his heart was here, in the Shire, where the real magic of Middle-earth lived on in every hill and stream, in every hobbit hole and garden. The festivities continued late into the night, but they were changed somehow. There was a new appreciation in every bite of food, every sip of ale, every burst of laughter. The hobbits celebrated not just Midsummer's Eve, but their home, their history, and the unbreakable bonds between them. And so, under the starlit sky, with the party tree standing tall above them, the hobbits of the Shire continued to write their own story, adding new verses to the endless song of their beloved homeland. Story 6. In the heart of Middle-earth, where the Silverlode and Anduin rivers meet, there lies a realm of timeless beauty and ancient magic, Lothlorien, Golden Wood. Here, amid the towering Melorn trees with their silver bark and golden leaves, our tale unfolds in the twilight years of the Third Age, as the power of the elves begins to wane, and the world stands on the cusp of great change. The light of Arundel, the evening star, shone brightly in the darkening sky as Galadriel, Lady of Light, stood atop Ciryn Amroth. Her golden hair caught the starlight, seeming to glow with an inner radiance. Her eyes, deep as the wells of time, gazed out over her realm, taking in every silver bough and golden leaf. For thousands of years, Lothlorien had remained a haven of peace and beauty, protected by the power of Nenya, the Ring of Adamant. But now, with the one ring destroyed, and the power of the elven rings fading, Galadriel could feel the change coming to her beloved forest. As she stood in quiet contemplation, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the Melorn trees. To most, it would have sounded like a soft whisper, but to Galadriel's ears, it was a song, the voice of Lothlorien itself, singing of ages past and the uncertain future that lay ahead. Descending from Ciryn Amroth, Galadriel walked the paths of Kara's Galadhan, the heart of the elven realm. The great Melorn trees rose around her, their dwellings seamlessly blending with the natural beauty of the forest. Soft lights twinkled among the branches, reminiscent of the stars above. As she walked, memories of millennia gone by flowed through her mind. She remembered the founding of Lothlorien, planting of the first Melorn seeds gifted by her kinsman Gil-galad. She saw again the faces of countless elves who had sought refuge in the Golden Wood over the ages, finding peace and healing beneath its boughs. Galadriel's path led her to the Mirror of Galadriel, the enchanted pool that showed things that were, things that are, and some things that had not yet come to pass. The surface of the water was still, reflecting the star-strewn sky above. As she gazed into its depths, ripples began to form, though there was no wind to disturb the water. In the mirror, Galadriel saw visions of Lothlorien's past the forest in its full glory, filled with the light and laughter of the elves. She saw the great battles of ages past, where the strength of Lothlorien had stood firm against the darkness. But then the visions shifted, showing her glimpses of what was to come. She saw the Golden Wood in autumn, its leaves falling not gold but brown, the magic slowly seeping from the land. She watched as the elves departed, sailing west to the undying lands, leaving the forest quiet and empty. Yet, even in these visions of fading, there was hope. Galadriel saw seedlings of Melorn trees taking root in distant lands, carried there by those who remembered the beauty of lawful Reen. As the visions faded, Galadriel heard a soft footstep behind her. Turning, she saw Celeborn, her husband and co-ruler of lawful Reen, approaching. His silver hair gleamed in the starlight, and his eyes held the wisdom of countless years. "The wood sings a song of farewell," Celeborn said softly, coming to stand beside his wife. "Its voice grows fainter with each passing day." Galadriel nodded, her hand seeking his. "The time of the elves is ending," she replied, her voice tinged with both sadness and acceptance. "But the beauty we have nurtured here will not be forgotten." Together, they walked through the forest, their steps silent on the soft forest floor. They passed by the great hall where the lord and lady had welcomed countless guests over the centuries. Now it stood quiet, the echoes of feasts and councils long past lingering in the air. As they walked, elves emerged from their dwelling, drawn by some unspoken call. They gathered around Galadriel and Celeborn, their faces a mixture of sorrow and curiosity. Among them was Halder, the March Warden who had long guarded the borders of lawful Reen. Galadriel looked at the assembled elves, her heart full of love for her people and the realm they had built together. "My dear ones," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. "Long have we dwelt in this golden wood, sheltered by its beauty and sustained by its magic. But the world is changing, and we must change with it." A murmur ran through the gathered elves, a soft sound like wind through leaves. Galadriel continued, "The time has come for us to leave these shores, to sail west to the undying lands. But though we go, the spirit of lawful Reen will remain, a memory of beauty in the hearts of all who have walked beneath these boughs." As she spoke, something magical began to happen. The very air seemed to shimmer, and the forest around them came alive with light. Every leaf of every Melorn tree began to glow with a soft, golden radiance. It was as if lawful Reen itself was rousing, awakening to bid farewell to its long-time guardians. Celeborn stepped forward, his voice joining Galadriel's. "Before we depart, let us sing one last song to the golden wood. Let our voices join with the trees, the rivers, and the very soil beneath our feet. Let us weave a memory that will endure long after we have gone." And so, beneath the starlit sky, the elves of lawful Reen began to sing. Their voices rose in harmony, a melody both joyful and sorrowful, celebrating the beauty of their home while mourning its passing. The song spoke of golden leaves and silver bark, of starlight on clear pools, of the wisdom garnered over countless years. As they sang, the forest seemed to respond. The Melorn trees swayed gently, though there was no wind. Flowers bloomed out of season, their petals unfurling in the night. The waters of the Silverlode and Anduin rippled in rhythm with the elven voices. The song swelled, growing in power and beauty. It was a song of memory, of magic, of the eternal cycle of growth and fading. It echoed through the forest, carried on the wind to the far corners of Middle-earth. Those who heard it, though they knew not its words, felt a sense of bittersweet beauty, a fleeting glimpse of a world passing beyond their reach. As the final notes of the song faded away, a profound silence fell over lawful Reen. The glow of the Melorn leaves dimmed, but did not entirely fade, as if the forest was holding on to this last moment of elven magic. Galadriel looked at her people, seeing the mixture of sorrow and resolve on their faces. "We have sung our farewell," she said softly, "but this is not an end. The beauty we have known here, the wisdom we have gained, we will carry with us. And in the lands we leave behind, our song will linger, a whisper on the wind, a memory of light in the depths of forests yet unborn." In the days that followed, the elves of lawful Reen prepared for their departure. But even as they packed their belongings and made ready to leave, they took care to ensure that the legacy of the Golden Wood would endure. Seeds of Melorn trees were gathered, to be gifted to those who would remember and honor the beauty of lawful Reen. Scrolls containing the lore and history of the realm were carefully preserved, destined for the libraries of Rivendell and Minas Tirith. And in hidden glades throughout the forest, the elves left small tokens of their presence: a silver leaf here, a crystal vial of Galadriel's light, their small magics that would continue to bless the land long after they had gone. Finally, the day of departure arrived. As the first light of dawn touched the tops of the Malorn trees, turning their leaves to brilliant gold, the elves of Lothlorien gathered one last time in the heart of Kara's Galadhon. Led by Galadriel and Celeborn, they began their journey to the Grey Havens, from whence they would sail to the Undying Lands. As they passed beneath the eaves of the forest, each elf reached out to touch the silver bark of the Malorn trees one last time, and though no word was spoken, a promise passed between the firstborn and the forest that neither would truly forget the other. The last to leave was Galadriel herself. At the edge of the wood, she paused and turned back. For a moment, she stood silent, her eyes taking in every detail of the realm she had loved for so long. Then softly, she began to sing. It was a song of blessing, of protection, of enduring memory. As her voice rose and fell, a shimmering veil seemed to settle over Lothlorien. It was not a barrier, but a blessing, a final gift from the Lady of Light to the land she was leaving behind. Though the elves were departing, a measure of their magic would remain, preserving the beauty of Lothlorien for years to come. With a final, lingering look, Galadriel turned away, following the path that would lead her people to the sea. Behind her, the golden wood stood silent in the morning light, its leaves gleaming, its beauty undimmed. Though the time of the elves was ending, the song of Lothlorien would continue, a whisper of magic in a changing world, a memory of light for all who would listen. Story 7. On the eastern slopes of the Misty Mountains, where the shadows of ancient peaks give way to a sea of green, lies Fanger Forest. Here, among trees older than memory, our tale unfolds in the early days of the Fourth Age, as the world of men begins to flourish and the elder races fade into legend. The air was thick with the scent of moss and old growth as Treebird, eldest of the Ents, stood at the edge of a hidden glade deep within the heart of Fanger. His bark-like skin, weathered by countless seasons, blended seamlessly with the ancient trees surrounding him. Eyes as deep and green as forest pools gazed out over the woodland realm he had tended since the dawn of time. For many long years, Fanger had slumbered, its inhabitants withdrawing deeper into the forest as the outside world changed and grew. But now, in the wake of great events that had shaken Middle-earth, Treebird sensed a stirring in the ancient woods. It was time, he felt, for Fanger to awaken once more. With a deep, rumbling voice that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself, Treebird began to speak. His words were not in any language known to men or elves, but in the ancient tongue of the Ents, a language as old as the trees themselves. It was a call, a summons to the slumbering spirits of Fanger. As his voice echoed through the forest, the air began to change. A breeze stirred leaves that had been still for centuries. Shafts of sunlight, as if responding to Treebird's call, pierced through the dense canopy, illuminating patches of forest floor long hidden in shadow. Slowly, with the creaking of ancient wood and the rustling of leaves, the forest began to respond. From the deepest groves and the oldest hollows, other Ents emerged. Some were tall and slender, like silver birches, others gnarled and stout, like ancient oaks. Each moved with the slow, deliberate pace of beings who measure time in centuries rather than years. Among them came Quickbeam, the youngest and hastiest of the Ents. His eyes, bright with an eagerness unusual among his kind, darted about as he took in the gathering. Hum. What is it, old Treebird? He asked, his voice like the sound of a swift stream over stones. Why have you called us from our long slumber? Treebird's eyes crinkled in what might have been a smile. The world is changing, young Quickbeam, he rumbled. The shadow has passed, and new life stirs in the lands beyond our borders. It is time for Fanger to awaken, to remember its strength, and to grow anew. As the Ents gathered, other denizens of the forest began to emerge. Huerns, trees that had become almost Entish, or Ents that had become almost tree-like, shifted their roots and turned their branches towards the gathering. Birds, sensing the unusual activity, flitted from tree to tree, their songs adding to the growing chorus of the forest. In the center of the glade, Treebird began to sway gently, his branches waving in a rhythm as old as the world itself. The other Ents joined in, their deep voices rising in an Entish song. It was a song of awakening, of renewal, of the endless cycle of growth and change that governs all living things. As they sang, the very air seemed to thicken with magic. The ground trembled slightly, and from the rich soil, new shoots began to sprout. Flowers that had not bloomed in an age opened their petals, their colors vivid against the deep greens of the forest. The song spoke of the long years of sleep, of dreams of sunlight and rain, of roots reaching deep into the earth and branches stretching towards the sky. The melody changed, becoming a lament for the forests that had been lost, for the trees felled by axe and fire. But even in this sorrow, there was hope. The Ents sang of seeds carried on the wind, of new growth in distant lands, of the enduring spirit of the natural world. As the song reached its crescendo, something extraordinary began to happen. The boundaries between Ent and tree, between sentient being and growing thing, seemed to blur. The entire forest pulsed with life, every leaf and branch moving in harmony with the Entish song. From the edges of the glade, a group of young trees began to stir. Unlike the ancient giants that dominated Fanger, these were saplings, barely a few decades old. As the Ents watched in wonder, the saplings began to move, not with the slow swaying of wind-blown trees, but with purpose. They were awakening, becoming Entings, the first new Ents to be born in countless years. Treebird's eyes widened at the sight, a low hum of surprise and joy rumbling from his depths. "Ah," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "The forest remembers. Life renews itself, even in the oldest of woods." The song gradually faded, but its effects lingered. The forest seemed more alive, more aware than it had been in ages. The Ents gathered around the newly awakened Entings, their slow voices filled with excitement as they welcomed the youngsters to full consciousness. Quickbeam, ever the hasty one, was the first to approach the Entings. "Welcome, young ones," he said, his voice gentler than usual. "There is much for you to learn, much for you to see. The world has changed while Fangern slept, but some things remain eternal. As the day wore on, the Ents began to share tales with their new young charges. They spoke of the creation of the world, of the awakening of the first Ents, of the long years tending the great forests of Middle-earth. They told of the coming of elves and men, of the rise and fall of great kingdoms, and of the recent war that had reshaped the world. Treebird, listening to the tales, felt a renewed sense of purpose stirring within him. "The time of the Ents is not over," he mused aloud. "It merely changes, like the turning of seasons. We have slept, and now we must grow anew." As twilight began to fall, casting long shadows through the forest, Treebird called the gathering to order once more. "My friends," he said, his deep voice carrying easily through the glade, "we have awakened, and with us, Fangern stirs. But our task is not yet complete. We must tend to our realm, heal the hurts of long neglect, and prepare for the age to come." The Ents nodded their agreement, a sound like the creaking of great boughs in a strong wind. Even the young Entings, though they had much yet to learn, straightened their slender trunks with determination. "But we shall not hide ourselves away," Treebird continued. "The world beyond our borders is changing, and we must change with it. We shall send emissaries to the realms of men to remind them of the importance of the ancient forests. We shall nurture seedlings to be planted in lands long bereft of trees. Fangern will grow and spread, not by marching to war, but by sharing our wisdom and our strength with the world." As night fell fully, the glade was illuminated by a soft, green glow emanating from certain fungi and flowers that bloomed only in the deepest parts of the forest. The Ents began to disperse, moving with newfound purpose to various parts of Fangern. Some went to tend to long-neglected groves, others to clear choking vines from ancient trees. The Entings, guided by Quickbeam, set off to learn the lays and languages of the forest. Treebird remained in the glade, his roots sinking deep into the soil, feeling the pulse of life that now ran strong through Fangern. He began to hum softly, a low melody that resonated through the earth. It was a song of growth, patience, of the slow but inexorable power of growing things. As his song mingled with the night sounds of the forest, Treebird felt a sense of contentment wash over him. Fangern was awakening, renewing itself even as it honored its ancient roots. The world outside might belong to men now, but here in the deep woods, the old magic still lived and breathed. And so, under the canopy of stars barely visible through the thick leaves above, Fanger Forest continued its slow awakening. The Ents, no longer sleeping, but filled with new purpose, tended to their realm with the patience of beings who think in terms of centuries. The young Entings learned and grew, their very existence a promise of renewal and hope. In the heart of the forest, Treebird's song continued, a lullaby and a call to awakening all at once. It was a reminder that even in a changing world, some things remain constant: the cycle of seasons, the growth of green things, and the deep, abiding magic of the ancient forests. And as long as there were those who remembered and cherished this magic, Fanger, and all it represented, would endure. Story 8. In the vast tapestry of Middle-earth's history, there are threads that shimmer with untold tales and forgotten deeds. Among these are the stories of Alatar and Polando, the Blue Wizards, two of the Astari who journeyed into the Far East, their fates unknown to the chroniclers of the West. This is a tale of their travels, of the magic they wrought, and the legacy they left behind. As the Third Age dawned and shadows began to stir once more in Middle-earth, 5 Mire spirits were chosen by the Valar to journey across the sea. Clad in the bodies of old men and armed with wisdom and subtle magic, they were tasked with guiding the Free Peoples in their fight against the darkness. While Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast became known to the histories of the West, Alatar and Polando passed into the East, beyond the knowledge of those who would write the great tales. Clothed in robes of deep blue that shimmered like the twilight sky, Alatar and Polando stood at the shores of the Sea of Ron. Behind them lay the familiar lands of Rhovanion and Gondor. Before them stretched the vast, unknown expanses of Ron and beyond. Alatar, tall and stern with eyes that held the depth of ocean waters, turned to his companion. "The road ahead is long and shrouded in mystery, my friend," he said, his voice carrying the hint of distant thunder. Polando, shorter but no less imposing, with hair and beard the color of storm clouds, nodded solemnly. "Indeed, but it is the path we have chosen. The East has long been under the sway of darkness. It is time to kindle the light of hope in these lands." With a shared glance of determination, the two Astari began their journey eastward. They traveled through vast grasslands where horse lords roamed free, their passage marked only by the whisper of wind through tall grasses. They crossed mighty rivers whose names were unknown in the West, their waters telling tales of distant mountains and hidden valleys. As they journeyed, Alatar and Polando used their magic subtly, true to their mission. Where drought had withered crops, they called forth gentle rains. In villages plagued by strife, they whispered words of wisdom that soothed angry hearts. Always, they moved eastward, drawn by some instinct or purpose known only to them. Months turned to years, and years to decades. The Blue Wizards delved deeper into the East than any from the West had ever ventured. They encountered peoples with customs and languages wholly foreign to the lore of Gondor or the Eldar. In each place, they paused to learn, to teach, and to plant seeds of resistance against the encroaching darkness. In a hidden valley nestled between towering peaks, they came upon a society of mystics who had long studied the movements of the stars. Alatar and Polando spent many years among them, sharing knowledge of the West and learning Eastern wisdom in return. Under their guidance, the mystics' understanding of celestial magic grew, and they became steadfast allies against the shadow. Further east, in a vast desert where the sun beat down mercilessly, the Blue Wizards encountered nomadic tribes engaged in endless feuds. Polando, with his gift for languages, learned their tongues and began to weave tales of unity and common purpose. Slowly, over the course of generations, ancient enmities began to fade, replaced by a shared determination to resist the dark powers that threatened their lands. As they traveled, Alatar and Polando became aware of a growing darkness in the east. Whispers reached them of a great temple being built in the depths of a shadowy land where sorcerers practiced dark magic and made sacrifices to Sauron. The Blue Wizards knew that this evil had to be confronted, but they also understood the folly of direct confrontation. Instead, they began a long, patient campaign. In every town and village they passed through, they sought out those with the potential for magic. These individuals they taught not just spells and incantations, but the wisdom to use their powers responsibly. They formed secret societies dedicated to knowledge and resistance against the dark. Centuries passed, and the influence of the blue wizards spread like ripples across a vast pond. The East, which might have fallen wholly under the sway of Sauron, instead became a patchwork of resistance. While evil still held sway in many places, it never achieved the total dominion it sought. Yet the work of the Istari was not without cost. As the years wore on, Alatar and Palando felt the weight of their earthly forms. Their power, while still great, was not inexhaustible. They knew that they could not directly challenge the might of Sauron or his greatest servants. One starlit night, as they camped on the slopes of a nameless mountain far to the east of Ron, Alatar turned to Palando. "My friend," he said, his voice carrying the weariness of centuries, "I fear our time grows short. We have wandered far and done much, but the shadow still looms." Palando nodded, his eyes reflecting the starlight above. "True, but look at what we have accomplished. In countless hearts, we have kindled the flame of hope. In numerous minds, we have sowed the seeds of wisdom. Our task was never to vanquish the darkness ourselves, but to equip others to resist it." As they spoke, a soft glow began to emanate from their staffs. The blue wizards stood, feeling a call they had not experienced since they first set foot on the shores of Middle-earth. They knew, with a certainty that transcended mortal understanding, that their journey in physical form was coming to an end. "It seems our time has come," Alatar said, a hint of his old power returning to his voice. "But our work is not finished." Palando smiled, the years seeming to fall away from his face. "No, it is not. But perhaps we can ensure it continues, even in our absence." With a shared nod of understanding, the two Istari began to work their greatest magic. As the night deepened around them, they poured their remaining power into a final spell. They called upon the knowledge of the West and the wisdom of the East, weaving a magic unlike any seen in Middle-earth. As the first light of dawn touched the eastern sky, the spell was complete. Where the two blue wizards had stood, there now grew to saplings. They were unlike any trees known in Middle-earth, their bark a deep, shimmering blue, their leaves like silver stars. The saplings grew with unnatural speed, reaching maturity as the sun climbed higher in the sky. By midday, they stood as mighty trees, their branches reaching towards the heavens, their roots delving deep into the earth. The air around them hummed with magic, and those sensitive to such things would feel a sense of peace and strength in their presence. From these trees, seeds were born, carried on the wind to far-flung corners of the east. Wherever they took root, they grew into beacons of hope and resilience. Those who rested in their shade found their resolve strengthened, their minds cleared of doubt. In times of darkness, the trees would glow with a soft blue light, a reminder that even in the blackest night, hope endured. The tale of the blue wizards faded into legend in the east, but their influence remained. The societies they had fostered, the wisdom they had imparted, and the magic they had taught continued to thrive. When Sauron's forces marched east during the War of the Ring, they found not the easy conquest they had expected, but a land of diverse peoples united in resistance. And so, though their names were forgotten in the great histories of the West, Alatar and Palando, the Blue Wizards, fulfilled their mission. They had come to Middle-earth to kindle the flames of resistance against the shadow, and in this, they succeeded beyond all expectation. In the years that followed, travelers in the Far East would sometimes come upon groves of blue-barked trees with star-like leaves. In these peaceful glades, they would feel a sense of ancient magic and timeless wisdom. And if they listened closely, they might hear the whisper of two voices in the rustling leaves, still teaching, still guiding, still working to push back the darkness. Thus did the Blue Wizards pass into legend, their physical forms gone, but their essence ever present in the lands they had adopted as their own. Their story, largely unknown in the West, became a cherished tale in the East, a reminder that hope can take root and flourish even in the most unlikely places, and that true magic lies not in grand displays of power, but in the quiet, persistent effort to nurture light in a dark world.